Welcome to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Today, I am joined by Dr. James A. Bush, a decorated military veteran, sought-after speaker, educator, and author. Welcome to Black Doctors Talk podcast, Dr. Bush.
Thank you so much, Dr. Porter. That was an amazing introduction. I feel truly humbled to even be here. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. So first, Dr. Bush, I would love for you to start by telling our viewers and listeners a little about your background. Where does it all begin for you?
Ooh, where it all begins. It begins in a very, very, very small town called Pahokee, Florida. I was born in Orlando, but I was raised by my grandmother in a small farming town outside of West Palm Beach called Pahokee, Florida. Many people know it as the Muck. And muck is see, when you're a scholar, you got to give the definitions. The muck is a form of soil that's rich in nutrients for the crops. And so it's a very small farming town. And the only thing that we have to do down there is chase rabbits. So I grew up chasing rabbits and working in the cornfields with my grandmother. So that's where it truly starts. But I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia now. I was in the Army for a good stint. Serving as an Army drill instructor at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Then I got out and I became a trainer and an adjunct professor of healthcare sciences at some vocational colleges here in the metro Atlanta area. Currently, I'm a senior education specialist and consultant for a healthcare software company where I travel, pre-COVID, I travel from state to state, training clients on the solution. And I most recently joined the hood with by becoming a doctor on healthcare administration with a concentration in healthcare policy. My current research now is on diversity and inclusion and increasing the amount of African Americans in the C-suite. So that's who I am and where I'm from, good old Pahokee.
And I love humble beginnings. I love it. So thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. So, Dr. Bush, as a decorated military veteran, what motivated you to join the military?
Ooh, so I want to begin by saying I'm not the only one in my family. We've had multiple members of my family to serve: my aunt, my uncle, my cousins. So I wasn't the only individual who did it. In fact, I had no intentions of joining the military. I mentioned that I was raised in a very small town, and one of my best friends growing up, Jewel, who's now passed away. Jewel convinced me to join the reserves at 17, monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. And that's what ended up happening. I did it for college purposes, but it was actually one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. It allowed me to truly see the world outside of my current situation, and to see, some things that I would never have seen, or maybe it would have taken me more time to see had I not joined.
Well, thank you for your service.
Truly my pleasure.
So in your book entitled, You Got Me Fact Up, you take a historical look at the impact of systemic racism on the African American community. Most recently, protesters, advocates, all have demanded an end to systemic racism and police brutality. In your opinion, what were the difference between the recent killings, your George Floyd's, Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, than what has transpired earlier?
Well, one, I want to go back to the title. You are absolutely right. You got me fact up. It was a play on words. I was probably a few years back, I was scrolling through a social media post, and a gentleman who did not have as much melanin in his eyes said something that was very, derogatory towards, the African American community. So my first thought was like, I'm from the hood, so you got me up is what I thought. Y'all might have to bleep that out. But that's what I thought, and I was like, I have to do my best to try to educate as many people as possible about how rich and culturally not diverse, but just immense our history is as Black people, and that our history didn't start with slavery. There was so much more before we were slaves. And so that led me, of course, to write that book. And I wanted to make sure that I tied in our history and how you could see how those things that happen in history make the people that we are today, and of course surround many of our circumstances, or at least the foundation or the cornerstone of a lot of our circumstances in the African American community. Now, with that being said, how does that some of the historical things that have happened, looking at the Breonna Taylors and the George Floyds, the main difference between the two now, because this has been going on for a long time. We got to be, let's call a spade, because I was an N-word back then, and I'm back in 1980 when I was born, and I'm still an N-word now in 2020. My mama was an N-word, and my grandma was an N-word, and hers was that before that. So nothing is new under the sun. The only difference now, of course, is social media. And what we see now with the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and we can kind of go on and on with all the hashtags, is now they have cameras. Now the ugly is being seen. And I don't even want to say this is a difference, because if you think back on Bloody Sunday of Edmund Pettus Bridge, that stuff had been going on for a while. That was only until 1965. That happened in 1965, but the Freedom Marches started in 1961. So for 5+ years, people had been getting their behinds beat wholesale trying to fight for freedom. But it wasn't until those good white families and those good, Italian families and Jewish families, etc., were able to see on 6 o'clock news, on the evening news, right next to their dinners, people getting their behind whooped by these officers, and they were just peacefully protesting. And that's what incited the movement and really fueled it. And we are now in the same situation. We are now in a pandemic. No one has anything else to do. In March, no one had anything else to do but to focus on their cell phones and to get projects done, et cetera, around the house. And that really made people sit down and look and see, oh my God, what is happening? Is this America? Is this what we're going through right now? I thought we were beyond this. That's what they would say. I thought we were beyond this. And this is the same thing that they were experiencing back in 1965 when they saw, Brother John Lewis get, knocked down and beat, and the number of people that were on that bridge as well. So that's how it ties in together.
Yep. And, you make some very valid points with the social media. Not only are we seeing it, but we're seeing it in real time in most instances, like as it's happening.
Exactly.
And it really has evoked emotion among, because, honestly, Dr. Bush, not only those white families or nice Italian families, there's some Black American, African American families who perhaps thought that we had moved beyond.
Yeah, you're right. That they were like, well, we're not enslaved no more, so we might as well, everything is fine. And you're right. And the other thing that I find interesting, because it's coming up in my next book, my next project, Fact Up 2. But I sat down and I got a chance to talk to some of the current the freedom riders from 1965, and not the headliners. I'm talking about the foot soldiers, some of the people who made up that crowd. And there's a wonderful lady here in Metro Atlanta area. Her name is Sandra, and she really had a chance to kind of put me in her shoes as a 17, 18, and 19-year-old doing this particular work. And she also stated that there was pushback from the previous generation, the same way that these young Black Lives Matters protesters are receiving the same pushback. Well, why are you guys out there marching? Just be a little quieter. Just make sure you go and vote. But that's the same energy that these young people now have for the Black Lives Matter movement is the same energy that Miss Sandra, when I sat down and talked to her, said that she and her friends had back when she was 17, 18, going to Alabama from Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow. And again, you said something that struck the voting piece, because one of the things that I hear more so now than I did maybe a few years ago is that this activism can't just stop at protesting, that we must take it all the way to the ballot. And here we are just a few short weeks away. from election day. And that's one of the things, because every day up until now is voting day, but November 3rd is election
Every day.
day.
Every day is voting day.
So there definitely is a connect with that. And I think it's important, that you touched on that it is a connection to what we're trying to get to and to the voting process, that what we want cannot get done unless we're letting our voices be heard through voting. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you for bringing that up. I actually just recently did a guest lecture. I was a guest lecturer for South Carolina State University, some of their scholars. And in that conversation, my whole lecture was surrounded, my whole lecture surrounded how do you increase civic engagement during a time of unrest, of civil unrest? And I always like to use the analogy of playing spades. And so many of the young people have figured voting doesn't work. Well, you guys are marching doesn't work. Well, why are you doing this? This doesn't work. Okay, well, the problem is you don't know how to play spades, because a true spades player know that you just can't play one card and expect to win the hand. There's 13 books to get, right? So what I talked to the young people about is, you know what, if you are truly going to play spades, okay, which is a game of strategy, and that's what politics is. It's the game of strategy. If you are truly going to play the game of spades, then you got to know how to bid. You got to know what's in your hand. And yes, my dear young people, that going out there and throwing a chair through the window of a Target does feel good, and it does get attention. But that's just the deuce of diamonds. That's only one card. That's only one book. Okay, you only won one book out of this whole thing. So, but I need you to then donate to some of the candidates that you like and that you, of course, support. Your donations gets, of course, more attention out there. Your donation is an ace of spades. I need you to go out there and register other people to vote. That's a king of spades. I need you to, of course, go out there and attend some of these meetings, like these city council meetings, these PTA meetings, these school board meetings, etc. Attend those meetings because you'll see what's happening in your community, and that's maybe a queen of spades if you want to. All right, but then when it's time to actually vote, you have a big joker and a little joker. See, I'm from the South. I pay joker, joker, deuce, deuce. That's big joker and little joker, and my joker is guaranteed. Right? Okay, so what I normally tell them is like, look, all right, you got the big joker, you have the little joker, and I know how y'all feel. Oh my God, I don't want. Well, the president ain't important. Well, the president's the little joker anyway, because we already know that everything that's important to us, from the way our streets look to the judges to the actual school board system and our healthcare, is all driven by the governor. So to me, the governor's seat is the big joker. Now, if you can get the big joker and the little joker along with those other spades, you don't won your hand. And the best part about playing spades and using that equivocation to the civic engagement is that spades requires a good partner. So that means I need Dr. Poor to be in this with me. I need to be able to do this without talking across this table. That I need her to get out there and she needs to do her part on that game. Because while I'm playing this card to donate, maybe Dr. Poor don't have the money to donate, but what she can do is register her friend to vote. And so that way we both win in books on this thing, and we're coming around here and going to run a Boston on them.
I love it. I love it. I love it, and it breaks it down so plainly. Love it.
That's it. I got to talk what I know. That's what I know.
I love it.
That's what I know.
I love it. So your core belief is that education is the great equalizer. Talk to me a little bit about how you actually stay abreast of the latest trends in your professions, all the ways that you continue to learn.
Well, I give honor to my mother and my grandmother. My mom had me early. I told her she was being fast. My mom had me early and wasn't able to finish high school. My grandmother also had kids at a very early age, and she wasn't able to finish high school. But there's one thing that they always preached, and both of them, God bless, went back to get their educations. My mom went as far as to get a bachelor's degree. But what they both preached at any time was reading, and they felt reading was super duper important. My grandmother would read constantly, and she would say that, child, they got their paper, you need to get yours. It was all about getting that paper, and she did something and she didn't even know it. Today we call them vision boards, and we we put up things on a vision board. But she did this in her house. She would, anytime one of her kids, and she had 11 of them things, anytime one of her kids would get a diploma or any kind of a graduation certificate or a college degree, she requested a copy, and then she put it up. And you have no choice in this little small house in Florida, in D-Land, Florida, but to pass by those degrees every time you have to use the restroom, because ain't but one bathroom in this house with 11 kids. All right. And her kids, of course, had kids. And she taught that lesson that anytime one of her grandkids got a degree or diploma, that needed to be printed out and brought to her house and put up on that board. So now you're looking at a next generation doing the exact same thing and seeing that imagery on that wall, that vision board. Well, she made a vision wall. And by the time she passed away, there was no room in that hallway because her kids, her grandkids, and her great-grandkids all had degrees, enough degrees to cover all of our ancestors. So that's where, to include my own young mama, my own fast mama's paper up there too. So now being the family's first, you're right. I do believe education is a great equalizer. We have to remember that even in a time like this, even in 2020, where we are leading companies and we're entrepreneurs and we're doctors and lawyers and attorneys, we're still shortchanged. We are the last hired and the first fired when it comes to anything being African-American. And don't get me started on Black women. So yes, you got to have, and whether it's vocational education or it's an actual academic degree, I think that it still puts you at least at minimum in the middle, the middle range when it comes to your salary. And we have to. I know I will never get paid as much as my white counterparts, but that's okay. I've come to grips with that. But it doesn't mean I'm going to stop educating myself. And because of that, I constantly try to keep abreast of what's new and what's current, attending conferences like the Black Doctoral Network. I absolutely love this one because this network and this organization as a whole, because you're constantly getting fed. You're constantly getting fed with new ideas and research that's happening, that's out there. TED Talks. TED Talks are amazing. I listen to lots of TED Talks about thoughts and ideas, not just, of course, amongst the African-American community, but the world and globally. It will just listening to some of these scholars, these business minds, these entrepreneurs that are out there, these thinkers that are out there. These, I can listen to a TED Talk of a scientist in India that will maybe spark an idea that I can use here in my local community. So I give great nods to TED Talks. Professionally, the NAHSE is the National Association of Health Services Executives, which specializes in African-American healthcare executives, the type of research that I've been doing anyway. They're always good for a conference. So aligning myself with a professional organization, reading journals, reading journals. Obviously, anyone who's now kind of gone down that academic journey, journals now have been a part of my life. They've been a part of my life now for 5 years, and now I can't shake it. It's a habit. So now when I see a journal out there, I'm like, well, let me read that thing, see what they're talking about. So that, and then looking at other people in my arena and going back and reading their dissertations. I know nobody likes to do that, but I enjoy going back and looking at other people's dissertations, what they wrote about and what they spent their lives, investing in. So yes, that's how I kind of continue my education.
I love it. Thank you. So you also talk about having a heart of service. How important is it for you to give back, and what ways do you specifically serve?
Well, we all know, of course, it takes a village. I think one of my sayings, or my James-isms, one of my James-isms is that God granted us a cup of talent when we're born, and it is up to you, or for me, when my life is over, I want my cup to be empty. I want to give God back an empty cup because I left every talent that he gave me here on earth. And one of those talents that he gives all of us is a talent of service. I love being of service to my community, and I think it is part of your civic engagement. That's a spade itself. That's another spade right there, because it shows that you have ownership and you have value over your surroundings. So some of the things that I do continuously, Meals on Wheels. I do love delivering meals to my local senior citizens. I'm currently, or I'm not, well, as of yesterday, I am now the past president of a charter school here in Metro Atlanta, the Rise Schools. I absolutely love those kids and our scholars, and we're actually looking to start a high school soon. We're now K through 8. And then, of course, I'm the executive director for the Lizzie Porter Foundation. That is my family's foundation, and we specialize in bringing providers together to render services for underserved communities in Metro Atlanta. And well, obviously, COVID-19 took away our health fair this time, but next year, hopefully, we can come back strong and get everybody back together.
I love the many different avenues of service that you're doing. And as a K-12 educational leader, I say thank you for serving on the board of that charter school, because we
I love it. It is truly amazing. One of our recent renovations to the facility went viral because we have steps throughout the entire building when we're K through 8. And when I came on board on the board 3 years ago, it was a small school with, modest means. And we really tried to work to give it an identity and a new vision. And one of the things that a phenomenal photographer came in our current executive director, a doctoral candidate himself, Dr. Davion Lewis, we had this vision of putting the HBCUs on the steps of each one of the rises of the steps. So the students would see the HBCUs, and every time they took a step, they step on HBCUs. So it was, here's Benedict College, and here's Bethune-Cookman, here's Florida A&M, here's, Howard University, this is Hampton University. So it's just very beautiful. And it really went viral a few months back. So I was super excited about that. But we're always doing great things at the Rise Schools.
Love it. Now, your doctoral research focuses on the barriers in career attainment for African Americans and the need for sponsorship. What were some of your major findings from this research?
Ooh, the themes. I encourage anyone, if you are not currently doing research in the field, to please make sure that you do research that speaks to you and speaks to your passion. I mentioned earlier that, well, my primary gig is a training educator or consultant with a healthcare organization. And as hospitals, come and purchase my solution or the solution from my company, I then have to go out and train them all up. And I see the C-suites from every single facility in every single state. I've been to all 50 states and to one territory. I have a lot of traveling under my belt. And I noticed a theme. Even in densely populated areas like DC, the DMV, or going down to Miami or Chicago and New York, LA, you go to places with tons of diversity, and I see diversity when I enter the hospital. And then as I start going up that elevator, the diversity starts to fall off. And then once we get past middle management, I see none. And it's interesting to be the only one in the room with a sea full of CEOs and hospital executives, and you're the only one standing up there. And so that's what drove me to do my research. Well, what was stopping us at that elevator? What's going on here? And so some of the themes that I saw in my research, I interviewed 24 African-American executives, some were at director level, others VP, AVP, and senior vice presidents within their prospective organizations. And some of the things that came up, lots of challenge management mechanisms that they were taking to cope with the microaggressions that they were receiving. And it, sadly, and when I had to step away from, being, of course, an African-American myself, where I had to say, you know what, I can't put my bias in here. But it was very sad to see and read some of the responses of, well, I just prayed about it. I just let it go. I accepted, some of the responses that are coming back when they're hit with some of the negative, the microaggressions. It was just this whole level of acceptance. So that was one like big blow, like, oh man, wow. You know, sometimes you think it's just you that's accepting this behavior, but no, it's across the board. And the last one, or the major finding for me, which actually ended up changing the title of my dissertation, was the fact that there was a fine line between mentorship and sponsorship. Having a mentor, I think, is super important for any academic and for Black people in general. I like to call mine the board of directors. I have a whole board of directors, and they, you get a bunch of them together who speak to different things in your life. And so I have that. But what I found in this study was that, yes, having a mentor is important, but having someone who's already at the table, having someone to vouch for your skills, to vouch for your resume, was more important. Having a sponsor, and that was a finite thing that was one of the findings.
I absolutely love the sponsorship. I mean, because that, to me, it seems a little more engaging or personable for you. And in addition to having your own board of directors, someone who's invested in you. I love that.
Exactly. You think about, I'll use you as an example. Oh my gosh, I love Dr. Porter, and she's at a place where I want to be. But then you pour everything into Dr. Porter. Well, the whole point of having a board of directors is to have different perspectives, to have different ideas and thoughts that will lead the mission or drive the mission of that particular organization. And so if you put yourself as the company or the building or the organization itself, get yourself a good set of board of directors, a family member, a friend, someone who's not a friend or a family member, to kind of say, you know what, I don't think that's a good idea, Dr. Bush. You probably shouldn't be doing that. You probably should go in this direction, because every one of your members, I have about 5 on mine that I call for specific things. If I'm thinking about publishing, what do you think about this? And they would give me, of course, board of director type of feedback. Sometimes board of director feedback is not the kind of feedback that you need, but you take it because it's coming from a place of love. And I think everyone should have a board of directors, not just, of course, a mentor. Relationship. And then, of course, the sponsorship thing. There is this thing that we say in the Black community about, being crabs in a barrel. And that, now that we have made it, we are now the Huxtables now. We are that shining family or representation within our own communities. You may not be much back at home, Dr. Porter, in your own kitchen, go and pass me them green beans, Dr. Porter. But in the outside world, to some little girl, to some young, professional, some young scholar, oh my God, I love Dr. Porter. She is just everything. And we have to remember that. And what we then have to do is say, I know it's not much, but let me look at your resume. Let me help you out with your resume. I know it's not much, but let me help you out with some interviewing skills. And then when we do get in these positions of power, if we do get at that table, doing just like this, just reaching back and helping pull somebody else, because we have to get more representation in there. We have to get, as a person who straddles academia and the corporate life, I know I don't see many of us in the corporate life, and we already have studies that say we're not prominent in academia, but each one of us has to do this, because you know what they have at these companies? At these companies, they have this system of recommendation for hires. Well, internal recommendations. Well, there's a flaw with internal recommendations. Our cities are still segregated. And so if you're asking me to if I'm a white man and I live in a white neighborhood, chances are my kids go to an all-white school and they participate in tennis and soccer in an all-white league. And so I go golfing at an all-white golf club, golf, organization. And so when you're asking me for a recommendation, I don't know any minorities. I don't know any Black people, Asians, Hispanics, so my recommendations are going to be other white people, because I pull from where I am. And that's the problem with internal recommendations. And so now we, as Black people, need to realize that we need to be sponsors for someone else. Not just a mentor, but a sponsor, saying, you know what, there is a position at this company. I think you are a good candidate. I know you are not going to. My name is on you now. You know, just like with our mamas, our grandmamas. Look here now. Don't you, because you do something, you're embarrassing the family. And if we take on that mindset, and instead of just saying, well, girl, I'll look out for you, going and actually pulling them up and sponsoring them into the organization, we can help move that needle forward and increase diversity inclusion in our organizations.
I absolutely love that concept. I mean, absolutely love that. What do you think is keeping individuals who are at that level from sponsorship? What's keeping them from doing that?
There's a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder. Dr. Joy DeGruy. Please forgive me, ma'am, if you're listening to this. I did not mean to mess up your last name. But it's a book called Post-Traumatic Slavery Disorder, and I love it. Syndrome. And it speaks about some of our behaviors and attitudes and how a lot of that stuff stems from slavery. And it was really, really mind-blowing. I think, and maybe it's subconscious, or maybe it's cognitive dissonance, that we get to these particular levels and we've attained these things, and then now we perceive it as a threat. Just think about there's a concept, or there was an old law in the books that not more than 3 or 4 Black people could be gathered in one spot at one time. That was considered a crime. It was one of the Jim Crow laws. But we just take that and we pass it onward with, from generation to generation. And now we're afraid to be together at the water cooler. Here it is. You're all professionals. We're all educators, or we're all whatever, accountants, or whatever your role is. And you're nervous because you don't count in your head. 1, 2, 3, Shaquita here, Jerome here, James here, and Brenda here. Oh, one of us got to go. I got to get back to my seat. And I think it is a very toxic and very sad behavior that has been passed on from generation to generation. And it's something that we all do. It's almost like when we see somebody else Black in the office, and we just give a universal nod, like, I see you, sister, I see you, brother. It's just one of those things. And I think once we acknowledge that, no, this is not appropriate behavior. White people don't have to do this. White people don't have to worry about being in an area. They could sit there and have lunch for 3 hours straight, and not one of them look at the clock and worry about their hours. And that's just not a luxury that Black people have had in the corporate environment. So.
Wow. So you authored another book entitled Standing on Tables, a guide for making learning engaging for adults. How do adults best respond to learning?
Adults. So adults learn by WIFM. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? One thing I've gathered now, while I may be on the board for K through 12, my whole profession has been adult education, adult learning. I've worked at mainly vocational schools. That's my academic background, vocational education, and I've been technical trainers for these facilities. And one thing I gathered when I first stepped foot in that classroom, I was like, well, James, let's get these foundations. I went to go reading. Let's get these foundations of learning. How do adults best learn? And one thing I took from that is sometimes your learning style doesn't change from when you were a kid anyway. That same learning style that you needed in 6th grade of seeing pictures or singing songs or building it yourself, taking that Play-Doh and clay and making that particular shape is the same learning style that they need when they're adults. And that's what I applied to my training. But there's one added level there called WIFM. What's in it for me? Adult learners, on top of needing me to, present the information in a style that's best suited for them, they need the WIFM. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? Why is me? What do I get from learning this information? And so that's what I do when I go to the hospitals. I give them the WIFM. This will increase your productivity. This will help you get back home to your family, a lot easier. This will get your boss off your back if you listen to me. Or when I'm with my students in the classroom, this will give you an A in Dr. Bush class. And this one is going to give you an F, What's in it for you? This F is what's in it for you. You don't turn my work in on time. But the WIFM.
I love it. I love it. So what do you consider your greatest strength?
Dr. J's greatest strength is I'm a motivator. I'm a motivator and I'm an engager. I think that is probably one of my best talents. While I know I'm an educator and I think I'm a great educator, I think all educators are motivators and engagers. That's what you truly are. And it doesn't matter if you're a K through 12 or if you're in a college course, if you're a trainer, if you are in education, you are in a sense a motivator. You're motivating someone to get to the end goal. Um, at the bottom of my resume, it's been one of my taglines forever. I put motivation accomplishes the mission. I am a former Army drill instructor, and that was my key driver for my soldiers. You have to stay motivated. You have to keep focused on the goal. One of my other Jamesisms is that you cannot see the path with tears in your eyes. Adversity comes, and life is not going to always be easy. Things will take you off of your journey. I know in that 5-year path that it took me from becoming Mr. James to Dr. J, there were lots of roadblocks. There was 4 different funerals that I had to attend, plus my loving grandmother who passed away. But the mantra that I live by is that you can't see the path with tears in your eyes. You got to move them things out the way. It's okay to cry. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be down. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm gonna close this laptop, screw this dissertation chair, screw this dissertation. I'm gonna be ABD for the rest of my life. All right, give yourself that day. But tomorrow, wipe, and then you can see crystal clear. Tears are amazing and they're gifts from God, because sometimes, you do get dust in your eye. Your eyes do get clouded, but that it's just like raindrops. And when they start to fall, your eyes start to clear up in that vision. You release that tension and you can see so clear. So yes.
You cannot see the path with tears in your eyes.
Cannot. Can't see the path with tears in your eyes.
I love it. I love it. Now, you alluded to some of the barriers and challenges that you face. What other challenges or obstacles have been in front of you that you've had to overcome?
I think, just the same challenges that everyone else faces. We go through depressions. There's something amazing called imposter syndrome. I think that many academics face, and it's something that I didn't even know what the phrase meant after more than a couple of years ago. And I was like, thinking, well, do I deserve to be in this room? Do I deserve to be in this position? They're calling me Dr. Porter, but I'm just, Jenny from the block. That was probably one of my biggest ones. I remember, and I thank God for my church and my church family, because when I was on this journey, they would say, well, hey, Dr. James, there goes Dr. Bush, there goes, and I was, of course, just a candidate. Or at one point, I was just a student. I wasn't even a candidate yet. And I was like, no, it's just James. No, it's just James. No, it's just James. And this lady, a more senior lady at the church, stopped me and said, baby, you don't stop nobody from calling you doctor. They're speaking into you. And if I want to call you Dr. James or Dr. Bush, I'll call you that, and you need to learn how to accept it, because you are. There's many people who have not gone down that road, and you have gone. And I really took that to heart, and it helped me overcome imposter syndrome. So aside from the deaths that I've experienced, that, just dealing with your own personal roadblocks, that was one of the things that I had to get over.
Wow. So what's next for Dr. J?
What's next? Making sure that I do not let this good old student loan and degree go to waste.
And so what are you going to do to make sure that doesn't happen? Because you know what? That is real.
that is real. I think and I hope it encourages someone else. You need to realize there's only 1% of you in the world and 2% of you in the United States. And I think probably even fewer if you're looking in just the African American community. But we are only 1 or 2% of anyone. And think back to your own doctoral journey. Look at some of the literature that you read and some of the theories that you read and what year they were published. what year some of these things were founded. You weren't even considered a human being in some of the years that some of these theories were established. Think about that you weren't even a thought, you weren't even property. You were a cow to them, you were a dog, an ox, an oxen to some of these researchers. And if we are going to truly combat, racism and look for equity in our society, then that has to be handled not just politically, but it has to be happen scientifically and spiritually. And part of that scientific part is us. That we're the academics. So my goal now is to continue down the publishing pathway. If Harvard never calls me to be a guest lecturer, that's okay with me, because that's not my goal. My goal is to be in these streets and and telling folks about spades and encouraging them to do the next thing. So publishing is definitely in the future. I'm currently working on a manuscript to pull work from my most recent bit of research. Continued research on the conversation of diversity inclusion in healthcare is a thing for me, and of course my my next book is also on the horizons too.
I love it. So how has your affiliation with the Black Doctoral Network enhanced you professionally?
Man, I thank God for the Black Doctoral Network. I think it's important to know that you are in a safe space. When you step out here, and of course I go back to the percentages, we are often the black sheep when it comes to your family. Well, child, I would have stopped at a bachelor's. I would have stopped at a, so you're often, if you're a doctor, anything, whether it's an ED, DBA, or PhD, or MD, or whatever, you're often the only one that in your community or in your area, and you really have no one to talk to. So if nothing else, it's been a wonderful tool and support system to be around your peers who are at different levels in their journeys. It's another WIFM idea for the individual. What's in it for me? Well, if I look at Dr. Porter, I can see what's in it for me. I see that she did it. Oh, then I can do it. And then thirdly, to know that your research wasn't in vain, that you're not the only soldier out there fighting this good fight to move the conversation forward. One thing that kind of disappointed me when I first started my journey 5 years ago, that BDN has kind of opened my eyes to, was, I think I read an article about the few, or the very few of us who are who get tenure at these universities and who are in academia, but then to go and see, oh wow, we do exist. We are in every facet. We're at every ring of our society. We are educators. We are PhDs. We're doctors. So it's really, really amazing and encouraging to be around so many people. And then I think the last bit for me is the level of acceptance that you find in this organization. The level of acceptance, because most recently, I think I was on a networking event with 20 other people, and it ranged from MIT and Harvard to Howard University to FAMU to Walden University to Capella. Like there is no, there was no pretentiousness that came on with it, because everyone's degree, everyone's title in that room was the same, doctor. And I think that was amazing to me, and I love that.
I love it. Dr. Bush, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. This has been an absolute pleasure. Please tell our viewers and listeners where they can go to learn more about you and all of the work that you're doing.
Oh, well, you could follow me. I'm Dr. J Bush on Instagram, Dr. J Bush 1 on Twitter. You can also find me at www.drjbush.com, and that's DRJAYBUSH. That's me.
Awesome. Please be sure to stay connected to the Black Doctoral Network and connect with us on all of our social media channels. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, and we hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and tell a friend.